the Senior Clinical Relationships Manager for Feeling Good Institute. So I've been on with this team for just a couple of months, and my role is really just to build relationships with people like you so that if we ever need each other, I'm kind of that point person to help facilitate that communication.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us. We're so excited to be here
Oh,
with you.
we're really appreciative that you all are gonna be here and teach us a few things.
You're
So
in for a treat. Yes.
yeah, I appreciate that. So Rich, do you want me, can I just call? Is that okay on people, or do you guys want to popcorn it? I'm just gonna go
I'm
in a
okay either way.
circle. Okay, Richard, hi, you're up next. in
Great.
my circle.
Oh, I feel
Or
special.
boxes. I love it.
Well, my name's Richard Lamb. I'm a licensed marriage, family, and therapist at the Feeling Good Institute. I'm also the certification program manager, so I help a lot of people with getting certified in the specific model of therapy that we do.
That's awesome.
Was there more
And
than I'm supposed to share? I feel like the silence is like, you got to share some little more.
well, you know what? I would love for you to share with our team briefly a little bit about the mode of your therapy, but maybe that'll be appropriate during the presentation. Up to you. I'll just let
Yeah,
you all.
we actually have it in the presentation, so we're
All
prepared.
right, good. Okay, let's hope on that. Okay, Liz, do you want to go next?
Yeah, make sure I'm okay. Yeah, so I'm Liz Sandberg. I'm a registered dietitian. I do have 3 boys, and that is did definitely provide me with a lot of experience. I've got one kiddo that has avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, and another that had a little stint with orthorexia, some neurodiversity there. And so, just kind of like been in the trenches with it all. And even this week, I'm helping out with a little 6-week-old baby of my cousin, so, and a 3-year-old. So, helping in different ways, still in the middle of it all.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Liz.
Yeah.
Zane, you're on my
Sure.
next list.
Yeah. So I'm Zane Pierce. Like Richard, I'm a marriage and family therapist here at the Feeling Good Institute in Mountain View, seeing clients both via teletherapy and in person. Since we're talking about children, I'm a father of 2 small ones, and one's 5 and one's 2. And yeah, definitely seen some of those eating issues coming out already. Not sure what they are. I've always had a great respect and interest in diet as it relates to mental health. That's something I'm hoping to get some additional training on in February. Even in the early 2000s was thinking about becoming a dietitian myself, but I went the mental health psychology route instead. So just really pleased to be here and to meet all of you, and to hopefully you'll come out of this presentation with a couple of new ideas on how to help your patients or clients. What do you call them? Customers? Clients?
Clients. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
great.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Zane. Rebecca, how about you?
Hi, I'm Rebecca Sukumar, and I've been working with Steph at Ban and Liz. Been there for almost like a decade, I think. Steph.
I think longer.
Yes, yeah. So I've slowly learned. Steph has trained me with eating disorders, so that has been very interesting for me to do that portion of counseling with nutrition. Yeah, and I have 2 adult kids. So. Yeah.
Jemimah, do you wanna go now? Thanks.
Yeah, nice to meet everyone. I'm Jemimah. I'm a dietitian. I've been working with Bay Area Nutrition for a little over a year and a half. I mainly work with eating disorder clientele, but do some general wellness management as well. And before I was at BAN, I actually started out at Center for Discovery at their residential in Menlo Park before I joined Steph at Bay Area. So nice to meet everyone.
Interesting. Nice to meet you.
So I'm Stephanie Brooks. I'm the founder of Bay Area Nutrition, and actually we're celebrating 25 years this month, which is kind of wild. Feeling the creaks and cracks in my body, and I was like, oh my God, what? Anyway, Yeah, and one of the things that I'm loving now, I'm really enjoying training and teaching people. I also enjoy my client work, but I really am enjoying like helping other clinicians, whether it be dietitians or others, just like what can we do to help each other as well so we can better be supportive of not just our clients getting better, but also for us. Not that I'm saying, oh, I'm going to teach you about nutrition, but kind of the balance. One thing we don't get, I'm thinking y'all get this in therapy school a little bit more about learning about your own feelings and awareness and that balance of that work life stuff. I realize everyone's a little better or less better in those. So that's one of the things that I'm trying to also cultivate, so people could do the work sustainably, if that makes sense. So yeah. And we see,
Totally.
as a practice, we see pretty much any and every nutrition related diagnosis. So we have folks coming in with diabetes who, often there's depression and anxiety. They may not come in with a mental health, like to us, with a mental health diagnosis, but as we get to know them and work with them, we're like, have you ever thought about maybe working with a therapist on this? So
And that's why we're here. And that is why
yeah.
we're here.
And a lot of the biomarkers, we know, especially now that, the head and the body are connected, and the head and the gut, and that whole serotonin thing. And, hey, maybe some of these biomarkers actually that are like causing us dis-ease,
Mhm.
maybe there's some stress involved. Well, if seeing a therapist can help, I'm going to use the word chill you out, so then your glucose looks better. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and then
anyway.
it's the same on our end, right? Because we have a lot of therapists. We have 70 therapists in our clinic, right, across the
Wow.
country and Canada. So a lot of our therapists have their own flair and style, and some, I would think all, but really focus on a holistic approach too. And so that's why we also really value knowing each and every one of you, because there are going to be times when we need to refer out as well to a dietitian and a nutritionist. So
Yeah.
thank you, Stephanie.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to let you all take it away.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We're really excited for this topic for today, how to ride a motorcycle. I'm just kidding.
Actually, that
motivating.
kind of sounds nice.
Oh, great. Another class for another time. Today we have the topic of motivating the reluctant patient. And before we begin, I just want to pull everything together by kind of sharing a story that might relate back to everything here. So when I was 8 years old, I had steak for the very first time. And my parents were immigrants, and they worked paycheck to paycheck, worked 2 jobs. So this was a special day. Oh, it was so amazing, the best day ever. And I remember I was at the kitchen, and I was just having my first bite. The char, the smokiness, the beefy richness. Oh, the first bite just melted in my mouth. It was so good. I remember after I finished, I looked to my dad and I said, oh, this is so good. I wish I had another one. And he looks at me and he said, you eat mine. I don't like steak. I like cup noodle. Yes. Oh my God. Really the best day ever. Another piece of steak. And I remember after dinner, after we finished, I looked over to my mom and I said to her, Mom, Dad's so weird. He doesn't like eating steak. He likes cup noodles. She looks at me. She says, you're so stupid. She shared with me a lot that day. And what I learned is my dad loves steak, but he loves me more. Because the way he thought, it led him to this emotion of love that pushed him to give me the steak. And the reason why I'm sharing the story with you today is everyone's like my dad. His thoughts is influencing his emotions. His emotions is influencing his behaviors. So my friends, if you want to influence your patients, you would have to understand their thoughts and their feelings. Therefore, you could understand their behavior and influence their behavior. So that being said, I want to share this presentation slide. Zane, did you want to share or do you want me to pull it up?
If you could pull it up, that would be good. I could pull it up on my end, but you know, whatever works for you.
Oh, I think might be disabled. So Stephanie, might ask you to either make me a co-host or allow me to share.
Are you allowed to now?
Let me try. Oh, perfect. There we go.
Okay.
All right, let me pull this up here. And then slideshow. Great. So like I said, not about motorcycles, but motivating the reluctant patient to melt away barriers of treatment, of compliance. And we already did our introductions, so no need for that. But just to kind of give everyone an overview today, we'll kind of go over a little bit more about the Feeling Good Institute and what we do. Then we'll talk about how to communicate with this reluctant patient, and then building motivation through something called a cost-benefit analysis. But then lastly, we'll talk about dealing with resistance using a skill called gentle ultimatum. That being said, I'm going to pass it along to Zane, my better half here, to explain the next slide.
All right, so I'm gonna talk a little bit about our institute, Feeling Good Institute. A little bit of history. It was started in 2012, I believe, by a group of clinicians who had trained under the preeminent psychologist, Dr. David D. Burns, who's written these best-selling self-help books. I don't know if you've heard of Feeling Good, the Feeling Good Handbook. And with it, he really brought a method of self-help called cognitive behavioral therapy to the general public in a very usable, digestible way. And so what our institute seeks to do is to really emphasize effective therapy. And we do that through several ways, such as having clinicians undergo ongoing training. And we use assessment tools to help our clients to track their their mood symptoms to see if they're getting better. So that really helps to add sort of a data-informed flavor to our approach and treatment. We consistently practice therapy skills as clinicians with an emphasis on using empathic communication. And we also utilize evidence-based treatments for depression, the many anxiety disorders, and the habits we'll be talking about today, the meat of this presentation. So we're the clinicians at Feeling Good Institute are really all over the map. We've got location here in Mountain View, New York City, Canada, Israel, and then throughout multiple geographic locations via telehealth. And we offer our clients a variety of services as well. Like we've got the weekly 1-hour counseling sessions. We also offer a highly concentrated version of therapy in which a person can take on a couple of weeks of therapy and really take multiple hours of treatment, and that's called intensive therapy. And we've also got a lower fee clinic where we have some pre-licensed professionals who offer therapy at a reduced cost for those that need it. So just a little bit about the institute, and we'll get into a little more about what's called the team approach, which is the type of cognitive behavioral therapy in which we specialize. So I'm going to pass the baton back to Richard. I guess he's my other half. He's going to be talking about communicating with the reluctant patient and what that entails.
Great. So I just wanted to share a little bit. When we think about communications and how to motivate people to eventually do something, is I like to look at the experts. And when I think about experts is when there's a hostage situation, how do you get the hostages out but also not give these kidnappers money. And there's been a lot of research behind this in terms of how people do it. And honestly, the best way is through communication and understanding, because you would need to understand more about their thoughts and feelings. So if we use an effective communication style, then we can understand more to get to the next step, to get the hostages out. Not to say you guys are keeping anyone hostage or anything like that. So just diving into this a little bit more. So there's something called the 5 secrets of effective communication. And I'll just kind of go through it briefly, and we have other trainings that can teach about it as well. So when we think about the first skill, it's called disarming, because you want to agree with what the other person is saying. Because if you start to disagree, the first thing you do is you butt heads, and you don't want to listen to each other. So the first thing we need to do is actually find truth in what they're saying. It has to be 100% true for you, as if it's 100% true for them as well. And which can be very difficult, because there are some things that are really easy to disarm. For example, if someone tells me, I love this Marvel movie, I'm like, me too, this is great. Great, we're off to a good start. But there are things that are harder to disarm. Some of you have children. Just imagine one day your daughter says to you, Dad, I hate you. How are you going to respond to that? How do you agree with that? And in my opinion, there's truth to every statement. And the thing is, there's always room for improvement. There's always room to be better. So in my mind, I don't have any kids, but in the future, in my mind, how I would respond is actually finding truth in what my potential future daughter would say, where it's true, I can improve. So how I'd respond is, I could be doing a better job listening to you and showing you how much I care. And by doing that, we're off to a good start. We're in alignment, we're in agreement. So this is going to be the first step of communication. The next one is, this is a little funny, this category is empathy, but within empathy, there's another category, empathy. It's split off into 2, thought empathy and feeling empathy. On one hand, you paraphrase and repeat back what the other person's saying. And on the other side is you guess how the other person might be feeling. Personally, I like to combine both of them. And let me just ask everyone, because sometimes people get a little bit confused. So I'd love to hear from everyone here. Why do you think it's helpful to repeat back or paraphrase what someone has shared with you? Anyone have any thoughts on that?
I think it shows, one, I'm actually listening and I'm trying to understand and maybe validate.
Stephanie, you're 100% correct. It's a demonstration of that you understand. I'm not sure if anyone has ever gone into a situation where you're talking and talking, and the other person looks at you and says, I understand. And then you start to wonder, do they actually understand? Do they actually hear me? But instead, you can demonstrate that you hear them by repeating back exactly what they said. So if someone tells you, oh, I had such a bad day today, I got a flat tire, and then on the way to work, I got a flat tire, and then I found out there's layoffs happening. You can just respond using the thought and feeling empathy. Oh my gosh, you're probably feeling so frustrated. Not only did you get frustrated and stressed, because not only did you get a flat tire, but you're also hearing that there's layoffs going on at your company. And by doing that, they'll be like, yes, that's exactly how I'm feeling. You just demonstrated it perfectly. So this is why this portion is helpful, because it helps the other person understand that you understand. So the next one is inquiry. Inquiry, to be honest, this is the hardest one for me. And the reason why is I'm such a problem solver. I just want to solve problems all the time. But inquiry is actually the opposite of that. Instead of solving the problem, you're asking more to understand what's going on. You want to ask more about how they're feeling and what they're thinking, because the more you understand, the more they feel heard. And the more knowledge you have, the more power you have as well, and the more empathy. And just to give a few examples, some of the inquiry might be like, can you share a little bit more about how you're doing? Or tell me more about how you've been feeling? Or can you share a little more of what you think about this? Just to elicit more thinking. So the next piece of it, you guys probably hear a lot of therapists use your I feel statements. And it's true, you got to use your I feel statements. It's how you become more assertive and to be able to share your experience. However, the thing that a lot of therapists don't share is I feel statements are extremely difficult because there's different types of I feel statements. We won't go into any specifics today, but I can give you a quick example. Just imagine you're with your partner and you're supposed to have a date, but they're 20 minutes late. And you're sitting there for the past 20 minutes, kind of worried about what has happened to them. You can either say, and when they come, you can either say, I'm so angry because you are late. There's a lot of blame there, but it's pretty direct. Alternatively, you can use a different type of I feel statement. You can say, I feel angry and worried because I was creating all these stories in my mind of what could have happened to you. I was imagining accidents. Not only that, I was feeling a little bit nervous and self-conscious because everyone was staring at me for the past 20 minutes, eating bread and drinking water. And the power between these two is they both might get your partner to come arrive early next time. But one is they'll probably be like, I have to come early, otherwise Richard will get upset with me. Versus, I have to come early because I love Richard so much and I don't want him to feel distressed. I don't want him to worry. I care too much about him to make him do that. I'll come early next time. You get both the same outcomes, but one is more positive than the other because the other builds resentment. Lastly, the next secret communication is stroking. And it sounds a little bit funky, the word stroking, but the reason why it's called stroking is it's stroking the ego. And essentially it's saying something positive about the other person. And how I like to use it is I like to look at their emotions and seeing what it speaks about them. That's really important and lovely. For example, if a mom is sharing with me, I'm just so worried about my daughter going on a field trip for the first time. I look at that worry, I'm like, wow, you're such an awesome mom. You care so much about your daughter's safety. And that's so much better than a compliment of, I like your shoes. Very different. And that's why communication is so important. It helps you build rapport. It gets the other person to like you more. And it helps you understand. That being said, I know we're going through it a little quickly, but I just want to make sure we get all the content in. I'll pass this back over to Zane.
Great. So is anyone here familiar with what's called a cost-benefit analysis, just by show of hands, excluding Richard, of course. So, okay, so Stephanie, looks like you are. Katie, okay, great. So I'm really excited to present this this method because I think it's helping professionals. We tend to encounter resistance or reluctance in one form or another. And I think that this tool allows the client to gain clarity, regarding the risks and benefits of their whatever their health behavior is. And then they can make an informed decision as whether or not they're to continue it or to change or alter it in some way. And I think that this can really help providers of nutrition therapy, Stephanie, to use your word from that presentation you gave us, I think back in November, to really understand the clients, both their internal and their external barriers towards pursuing their nutritional goals. And then later in this presentation, I'm going to do a little bit of crowdsourcing and ask you to come up with an example of a situation in which a client is reluctant to some kind of change that you've recommended, and we can demonstrate that using a cost-benefit analysis, or rather a cost-benefit analysis with a twist called a paradoxical cost-benefit analysis, which I'll share in a minute. But first, I'll give you the overview of how to use what a cost-benefit analysis is, and then how to use it. So I think I mentioned earlier, this really helps a client to think about how a specific behavior is both helping them and hurting them. So we have a form. It might be difficult to see here. Where on one side we have the advantages, and the other side we have the disadvantages. And this method is usually effective for clients who appear motivated. They're usually pretty easy to work with. And Richard, if you could click to the next slide, I'll take you all through the steps. So you don't need a particular form to do this. You could just pull out a blank piece of paper. On the top of the piece of paper, you could have your client identify what their target behavior is, and then actually, I'm going to rewind a little bit. I think you want your client to identify what their goal is, what their target behavior is, and then on the top of the form, you can have them write out kind of what the current behavior is. In other words, the status quo. Perhaps something having to do with binge eating, like, oh, I'm waiting until 3 o'clock to eat lunch, and then I find out I eat way too much, or some form of a problem like that. And then you'd want to really help them to think about what are the advantages of keeping up this habit, the way of doing things that they are. Sometimes clients can easily come up with their own and make a long list of advantages to that. Sometimes they might need a little bit of help in coming up. You might suggest an advantage as you see it for the client to either accept or reject. And you want to do the same thing with disadvantages. You might not wish to really suggest disadvantages. You want the client to really elicit their own perceived disadvantages of doing things the way they have been doing that. If we go to the next slide, Richard. So once your client has exhausted their list of advantages and disadvantages, then you can kind of ask them to kind of put things onto a scale. You could say, okay, I want you to think of 2 numbers that add up to 100 based on the facts and how you feel about the advantages and disadvantages that you listed. And for example, 70 points in favor of advantages, 30 points in favor of disadvantages. And that will really let you know sort of where the client's thinking is, or where their heart is at regarding their level of motivation to change. And that can be a pretty effective tool. It's pretty straightforward. I find it pretty easy to use. Richard, if you can go to the next slide here. But our presentation is about the reluctant patient. So what do you do when you have a client who's pretty set in their ways, or perhaps they've been yesing you for the initial appointment and say, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm definitely going to do it. By the next time I see you, I'm going to make some serious changes. And then you see the person, and it turns out they haven't really made any action at all. So you have the person who's basically they're struggling with a habit, a way of life. And with the paradoxical cost-benefit analysis, it's paradoxical. Richard, if you could go to the next slide, please. We want to really kind of flip the script on them, so to speak, and put them in a position in which you, as the nutrition therapist, are kind of pushing them to change, but they're having the client convince you as to why they think it's to their advantage to change. And this addresses something that in team therapy we call outcome resistance, and that's kind of a fancy way of saying that even though your client might want a positive outcome, like help with an eating habit, there's likely to be many internal and external factors that keeps this particular person stuck. And the result being is that they appear to be unmotivated, or that they're even resisting change. And a lot of times these factors aren't really in their conscious awareness, but if you use the cost-benefit analysis skillfully, you can perhaps bring those to awareness fairly easily. All right, so I'm going to walk through the steps on how to do a paradoxical cost-benefit analysis, in which you only focus on the advantages and you don't really elicit any disadvantages. So Richard, if you could go to the next slide, if you will. Step 1, you want them to put the habit that they're thinking about changing, a brief description of that up at the top. Step 2, you'll want them to list only the advantages of the habit, and if they run out of advantages, therapist or the dietitian can help them to think about what those might be. On the next slide, we have some examples of questions that the client can ask themselves. What are the good reasons to stay the same, to keep doing what I'm doing? What good things does it say about me that I eat whatever I want, whenever I want? Or maybe it shows me that I have, you know, a strong, healthy drive to live a life of freedom and liberty. Or, you know, is there anything that this helps me with? You know, it helps me to get more pleasure in my life. It helps me to take care of myself in what feels like a very real way. I feel comforted by what I'm eating. Those could all be examples of how this might be helping a particular person. Okay, so we're still on step 2 and going to step 3. When the person has exhausted their list of advantages, you ask something that in team therapy we call the pivot question. Okay, given all these advantages that you listed, tell me, like, why should you change? Why would change even be something that you're considering? And of course, when you ask this question, you know, you have to deliver it with a high degree of respect, using the tools that Richard talked about earlier, those 5 secrets of effective communication. And when you do it well, the client feels really supported. Wow, you really know me, that you were able to help me think of all these really important advantages. And then I think there's a step 4 on the next slide. Actually, let's rewind a little bit and talk about this more. So when you ask this question, this pivot question, you know, given all these advantages, why should you change? Why would you even consider changing? This puts the client in the position to what we call argue for change, to say, well, hold on, wait a minute. This is I know this is bad for my health. You know, this is really, you know, I have kids. This is jeopardizing my well-being, and I'm not able to, you know, I wouldn't be able to care for them as well if I keep this up. And so you're really putting the onus on them to tell you why they think changing is important. All right, so now we come to the point where I'd want to ask you, as dietitians, what are some of the, can anyone think of an example of a time, you know, you've worked with somebody on a particular issue and they've been reluctant or resistant, or yesing you, you know, regarding changes that you've recommended? And then we'll have Richard put it on an actual cost-benefit analysis. We'll do this together as a quick exercise.
I want to give somebody on my team an opportunity to share, because I know we've all had clients, or even if you just use a situation, I don't know, Liz, Rebecca, or Jemimah, is one of you want to share something, or even a common scenario?
I can think of one, I guess. Like a teenager that is coming and was wanting help for pain, stomach pain. And so we would talk about, you know, things, ideas that we could do. And I think that it was a lot of yesing, because they never like really implemented this. And, you know, there could be a lot of different reasons, but I could see this having been a really good skill to use with them.
Yeah, Liz, I think that's a great example. So when you met with the teen initially, did you settle on a goal for her, or maybe she settled on a goal herself? And if so, what would that look like? What would that be for her?
Well, like initially it was like troubleshooting. Why would you be, you know, what could be some reasons? And we thought, okay, maybe it was a really, really high amount of protein, you know? And so they said, yeah, I'll have less protein drinks. So it was, yeah.
Okay,
That
so
was
it sounds like we have the status quo as this teenager is over consuming protein shakes, but the target behavior I'm inferring being that you'd want her to reduce the shakes and maybe supplement it with other foods
Regular,
from
yeah.
other food groups, maybe perhaps solid foods or fibrous foods or things of that nature. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah. So let's think about like what are some of the advantages that this teenager might come up with regarding why she would want to continue to consume primarily protein powder shakes.
Mhm. The ease of getting it in, just
Mhm.
having a drink. Sorry, there's a dog in the background that you're
Well, that's not allowed. No.
So yeah, I think the big thing
Mhm.
was like it's just so easy.
Yeah, it's just easy, right? And you're a teenager and your life might be busy, and it's pretty simple to go and scoop some protein powder and add some liquid and shake it up, and
Yeah.
voila, you're at the door and you have some calories in you, some energy. Great. Can you think of any another advantage that you see might be keeping her stuck?
I don't know. I think for this one client, especially like ADHD type of issues and just not being able to remember what the plan was too. So I don't know what they would say was an advantage.
So I
to
guess
that.
an advantage might be, especially for a person who's maybe struggling with ADHD kinds of symptoms, it's like there's like a kind of an element of remembering and planning, and that's kind of hard to do. Maybe it's inconvenient.
Yeah.
Maybe it required going through extra steps.
Mhm.
Maybe it seems overcomplicated. So those would be all, advantages of the status quo.
Mhm.
Yeah, steps are easier to accomplish when you don't have to think about what you agreed on with your dietitian.
Mhm.
Right. And of course this question's open to anyone here. Anyone else think of any other advantages that this teenager
even
is
just
enjoying?
not having to change, because
Mhm.
sometimes it's the fear of the unknown. Like
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
like so like this is kind of, I'm gonna say, safe
Mhm.
for, I don't really, maybe on one level comfortable. Like
Mhm.
maybe there's a certain, I like it. I like the taste, texture, flavor,
Yeah,
there could
right.
be an appeal
Mhm.
from more of a mouth, but later on, like it hurts. So that immediate sort of satisfaction. I don't know if this was the case, Liz, or not, but if like I know if I eat a plate of brownies, I'm gonna feel like crud, but my mouth may be like, yeah, no, come on, keep them going, keep them going. This is
Mhm.
good. This is good.
Mhm.
So I think I don't know if those are some possible benefits of staying
Yeah,
the same.
yeah. Liking the flavor.
Hmm.
I'm imagining perhaps it's easily digestible, although it sounds like we're aware of the disadvantage that it's causing stomach pains, but perhaps up front there's no problems. So I wonder if that might be an advantage.
And with the teen, it could be like, well, all my friends are grabbing a shake and having it. There could be a
Yeah, right.
social
Yes,
image
yes. Yeah, we
part
enjoy our shakes together.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
kind of trendy, trying to
Mhm.
fit in.
Everybody's doing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good one,
Yeah.
Rebecca. Yeah. I'm trying to think what else could be. What else could keep a teen hooked on protein shakes and be reluctant to? Well, we said, I think you said something about the fear of the fear of the unknown. Like, what if I eat other foods and they might make my stomach feel worse, or how are they going to sit with me? Might be a fear.
Or how am I going to get them? Like that's
Yeah, or
also
how am I
like,
get? Yeah.
like I can grab the shake and run out the
Mhm.
door where, and maybe that's also a thing. It's like maybe they don't have the skills
Mhm.
to make something.
Yeah, to make a snack, right?
Yeah, could be
Yeah.
like not just time, or I'm going to use the word resources, and the
Mhm.
word resources could be, if they're a teen, but
Mhm.
people aren't going shopping for foods to alternative foods, like that's another barrier if they're not the shopper.
Right, right. Yes, that could be a barrier. Like I don't have to talk to my mom and dad about what I want to be on the shopping list. That's awkward. Um, uh, if I stop drinking these shakes, then I'd have to eat my dad's awful cooking. I don't know. There could be other reasons we don't know about. And this kind of gives us an opportunity to kind of tease out what those external factors are, as well as the internal factors. Internal being, I'm afraid if I eat something else, I might not like it.
What about like if they're drinking the shakes to maintain or lose weight? And so I don't,
Yeah.
so, but my question is like, what if they don't need to lose weight? You know, what if,
Mhm.
so do you
Yeah.
put advantages that are unhealthy? It's like an advantage to them, but it's not.
Yeah, yeah,
really.
you would, because you're really like, this is sort of an exercise in empathy. You're
Yeah.
seeing the world from their perspective. This helps to maintain weight. We as practitioners know that's not really the case, but that's how she sees it,
Yeah.
and we're going to ask her to make a value judgment at the end.
And culturally, I've found this with families where the kids might be first generation. Sometimes there's this huge, like, I don't know if the word's denounce, but you know, my parents cook a certain way, and I want to show my autonomy by not eating like foods from my, heritage, or like the cultural foods. I want to do more, I don't know, do the American thing, which I guess kind of comes into the whole a little bit about the image and the social pressures to eat a certain way.
Yeah, totally. So it could really kind of help
No,
the person to kind of assimilate. It's too big of a word to put on a teen's cost benefit analysis, but yeah, it helps me feel more to put like the distance that I want between myself and my culture, or to fit in more, or however the teenager would want to phrase that. So I'm looking at the time and realizing that it's running a little bit short. So what we would do with this is that we'd say, okay, like sounds like you've really come up with some really important advantages here, and then you list each one. It's easy to prepare, and it tastes great, and it's time efficient, and you're not going to gain excess weight if you drink it, etc. So given all of these advantages that you listed, why would you even consider changing this habit? And then seeing what she has to say. All right, so we'll save a little time for questions at the end, because Richard, I know you wanted to talk about the gentle ultimatum, which I think is another important factor to this.
Yeah, maybe I can cover this really quick, just so that way we have a little bit of Q&A time. Let me just pull this up. Oops, I cannot see it. Let's see, where am I? Okay, give me 1 second. I cannot see what's going on here. Let me pull it up first. Let's see. Okay, and then I'll share again. Here we go. And then slideshow. Very good. All right, so I want to share a little more about the gentle ultimatum. And this is a specific strategy that we use to essentially give people more information and let them make a decision. Part of this is there's something called dangling the carrot, making something seem very juicy, like, oh, I really want that. So it might be something like, Joe, I'm just really envisioning this life for you where you can focus on your exams. You're not distressed, focused on your stomach all the time because it's in so much pain. Not only that, but every day is going to feel really easy. You don't even have to think about it. It's not a second thought in your mind about pain. And then you feel healthy, you feel energized, you feel ready to take on the world. That's dangling the carrot. And then you go to the next part, voicing the resistance. And this is where you kind of share with them why they probably wouldn't want that outcome. So after you kind of share it, you're ready to take on the world. And at the same time, I'm a little bit worried because I don't think you would want that outcome. I don't think you want this. Because what that would mean is you have to change your whole diet. Part of this is you have to eat the foods that you don't really like. It's not going to be time efficient. You have to sit down, you have to eat, and then it kind of takes away from your studies. So I can see why you wouldn't want that outcome at all. Then after that, you list your preference. Of course, with every clinician or dietitian, you want the best outcome for them. And in this situation, I think the best outcome is that they listen to changing their diet. So how I would phrase it is, of course, my preference is that you follow along with these strategies, that you change your diet, you get the outcome you want, because I want a good life for you. And at the same time, I totally understand that this is a lot of work and maybe you wouldn't want this. And then you get to the fallback position. What will happen if they choose not to do it? And you have to determine what your fallback position is. I don't really know how it's like in the dietitian world, but I can imagine they probably wouldn't want to work with you at that point. So the fallback position is, and I'm feeling a little bit sad too, because it kind of sounds like if you didn't want to kind of work on this, what you're telling me is you don't want my help. You don't want me to help you with this anymore. And that makes me sad because I really want to help you. And at the same time, I respect you enough not to force you to do anything. Then you kind of sit with open hands and ask them what they think about it, which is inquiry. How do you feel about this? What's going through your mind when I share this? And at that point, they have the full picture. They kind of see, what is the good outcome? This is amazing. But at the same time, they see what's involved to get there. And this is very important because it highlights to them the steps. You get the full picture. And the thing about human behavior, we hate to lose things. If someone tells you, I'm going to give you $10,000, that feels wonderful. But if someone tells you, I'm going to take $10,000 away from you, that feels worse than the positive feelings of gaining. So the reason why we phrase it in this structure is we tell them, this is what you have. Look at this outcome, but I'm going to take that away from you. Unless, of course, you want to do the work, then you can get it. And here comes the motivation. So this is a way to communicate with our patients, our clients, to help motivate them more. Of course, this is a step that comes later. After all that we did, the 5 secrets of communication, the cost-benefit analysis, and eventually we'll get to this gentle ultimatum. Because it's important that we build that connection so that way they understand we're here and we listen and we respect you. And then you can deliver this so it doesn't seem as offensive. Ultimatums can be a little bit challenging. That being said, we're at the end of our presentation. And just to sum it up before we do into Q&A is the reason why we're here is to share a little bit more about how we can motivate people. And when we think about it, we have to understand their thoughts, their emotions. So that way they build that connection with you and therefore you understand. And by understanding their thoughts and emotions, you're in a better place to help them change it. And then when Zane did a beautiful job on teaching cost-benefit analysis, this sparks change. This sparks change in their thinking. And then we present to them, hey, here's your option for changing. Do you want it? Because you get this, but I can see why you don't want it. And now they have to make the choice. Do I want to change my behavior? Any questions?
Woo! That was so good, Richard.
I really
and
appreciate
Zane.
that. Yeah, that was great. So part of me is like, okay, so this isn't all done in like the first session. Yeah. And which I think as dietitians, our training is more like, okay, assess the client, figure out what's wrong, and then tell them what to do. I mean, not exactly. And so it's like by the end of session 1, you should have a plan and start implementing. And I know some of the trainings we've done is I'm like, slower is better, build that values conversation, that relationship. What are they here for? What are we able to offer? So it's like the first meeting, they're not walking out with sort of a plan. And this, I think, helps. And I think one of the things, like, I don't know, this sounds great. I could see me utilizing this a lot, as well as repeatedly, not just in the beginning, but then also like, maybe you're getting into that, like a stuck spot where you kind of just like, you're spinning and then kind of coming back to this. But I'll be quiet and let other people talk or ask questions.
I love what you shared there, Stephanie, because you're 100% right. It's all about building that connection first. And
Yeah.
it takes time to build connection with people. And then once you have that, they love working with you. They're like, this Stephanie really gets me. She gets what's going on for me. I love talking to her. I want to work with her. And now it's harder for them to leave as well, and they want to work. And then you kind of build in the skills, and of course you'll go back to them again if you kind of notice the resistance to change coming back up again. So I love that you're sharing that. Any other thoughts or questions? Specifically, I'm looking at Rebecca, Liz, and Jemimah. Any questions?
I'm actually a little curious about that fallback and like in the step and how did, because I'm trying to imagine myself going through the steps, and I think where it's maybe not super clear for me yet is how you got from I forgot the name of the previous step, but transitioning to the fallback.
Yeah,
If that makes
listing
sense.
preference.
Yeah.
Yeah. Zane, do you want me to take this? I feel like I'm talking a lot. I don't want to.
No, that's fine. I have my own ideas, but yeah, I'd be curious to hear, since it was your content, how more about how one gets to the fallback position and how one even decides on what a fallback position is.
So the fallback position actually comes before you even see the patient. You need to think like, if they don't do this, what's going to happen? And everyone has a different fallback. Are you going to be like, okay, we're going to try decreasing it in moderation and kind of see if it works? I don't think that's the best option. Maybe we can try it, and then once they see that it doesn't work, we'll switch and reevaluate again. Or your other fallback is, maybe you don't want to work with me. And that can be really challenging too, a bigger step away. So when you transition in the way that you present the gentle ultimatum is after you list your preference. Of course, my preference is that you choose this hard path and do all the hard work. And at the same time, I totally understand if you wouldn't want to do this because it's very challenging. There's a lot that's behind it. And by actually choosing not to do this all this hard work, you're actually telling me you don't want to work with me, which makes me sad because I love working with you. I love seeing you. And at the same time, I respect you enough not to push you to do anything. That would be my transition.
Okay. Yeah. No, thank you for clarifying that. That's helpful. Thank you.
And
I put in the chat a little bit more information. And Stephanie, do you think it would be helpful to also send this out in an email to your team too?
That would be great.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'll do that.
That would be great. Yeah.
Okay.
I could see as a clinician, it would be hard to like especially, you want like your clients to get better. Maybe you have more, maybe a certain more insight and knowledge about what if they did this, that, and how that would like end up for them. And so I think I'm finding, hearing you say that, Richard, I'm finding this internal like resistance to even being able to go there. Like, what? Like, wait a minute here. What in the world? But also I see it like if we push, their reaction is going to just be to push back harder. So I could see that like stepping, like leaning back a little and giving them space. Yeah. But I personally, that's a hard one for me to do. And I have to do a lot of self-awareness and check, like, how much stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It's hard to, it's difficult to make peace with the idea of, oh, here's a teenager who's struggling with stomach aches and she's going to continue to struggle with stomach aches. And I know exactly what she can do to avoid that. But leaving herself open to having her make that decision and giving her that autonomy, really difficult. Also difficult from perhaps a business standpoint as well. As like, here's a person who came for 2 appointments and now I'm probably not going to see them again unless they decide they're going to come back and get serious about this.
So
but then, you also stop. Yeah, right. Yeah. And then but then you also kind of stop spinning your wheels trying to push that boulder uphill. I think you said it really well. When we try to persuade a reluctant client, they just resist or they push back even harder. And that's sort of the idea here, is we want to kind of step out of that dynamic and put the decision to change in their hands.
Yeah.
Quite difficult. Yeah, quite a mind shift.
Yeah. And I think being okay with that, being okay with going there, because I think our training is not like, we're not trained to be open to that. We're trained to like fix people because it's more of a medical model, which has so many problems. And I'm really glad that I think I'm hearing from newer dietitians coming out of like school, they're getting a little bit more of this versus like way back when, there was kind of not a lot of empathy